Losing your job, it can feel like the ground just falls out from under you. But in that really uncertain moment, you need to know that here in Ontario, you have legally protected rights. And they often go way beyond what an employer might first offer. So let's break down what you really need to know.
So, the moment it happens, the big question on your mind is, what now? Your employer's probably going to hand you a package. They'll call it their standard offer. But what are you actually entitled to by law? The answer? Well, it's usually a lot more complicated and frankly a lot more substantial than you might think.
Okay, so first things first, let's get a key term straight. The vast majority of terminations in Ontario are without cause. Now, that sounds bad, but it doesn't mean you did anything wrong. Not at all. It's just a business decision. But the second your employer makes that decision, it kicks off a whole set of legal obligations they have to you.
You know, the best way to think about what you're owed is to picture a house. The law sets an absolute rock-bottom minimum. Think of that as the concrete foundation. But for a whole lot of people, that's just the start. There are often entire floors, rooms, and a roof built on top of that foundation that you're also entitled to.
That foundation we're talking about, it's called the Employment Standards Act, or the ESA for short. This is the legal floor, the bare minimum that every single employer in Ontario has to provide, no exceptions. And it outlines the absolute minimum notice or pay you have to get, which is broken down into two main things you need to know about.
And this is super important to get right. Termination pay and severance pay are two completely different things. They are not the same. Termination pay is that basic minimum notice, right? It's usually 1 week of pay for every year you work there, and it maxes out at 8 weeks. Severance pay, that's an extra payment, completely separate, that's meant to compensate long-term employees. But here's the catch. Not everybody gets it.
So how do you know if you qualify for that extra severance pay? Well, there are basically two boxes you have to tick. First, you need to have been with the company for 5 years or more. And second, the company has to be pretty big. We're talking about a global payroll of at least $2.5 million, or they're in the process of laying off 50 or more people pretty quickly.
So here's what those bare minimums for termination pay look like under the ESA. As you can see, it tops out at 8 weeks. But remember, and this is the key part, this is just the foundation of the house. For most people, this is nowhere near the final number. Okay, now for the good stuff. Let's talk about the rest of the house. This is where something called common law comes in, and it's a real game changer. You see, common law looks past those bare minimums and asks a much more important question. What's actually fair for you in your specific situation?
And hey, don't just take my word for it. This is a direct quote from Ontario's own guide to the ESA. This is it right there in black and white. The Act provides the minimums, but common law can give you greater rights. This isn't some secret loophole. It's a fundamental part of how our legal system is designed to work.
So what is this common law reasonable notice thing anyway? Well, it's actually a pretty simple idea. It says your employer has to give you enough notice or pay to give you a reasonable amount of time to find a similar job. And here's the most important part. Unlike the ESA, it is not capped at 8 weeks. It's supposed to be a real financial bridge to your next career move.
So how do courts figure out what's reasonable? They don't just pull a number out of a hat. They look at 4 key factors to figure out what's right for you. They look at your age, how long you worked there, the kind of job you had, were you a senior manager or in a very specialized role, and finally, what the job market looks like right now for jobs like yours.
Let's look at a real-world example. Meet Alex, a 55-year-old manager with 10 years at the company. Under those bare-bones ESA minimums, Alex is getting about 8 weeks of pay. But under common law, when you factor in Alex's age and seniority, a court could easily award 12 months, maybe even more. The difference isn't just big, it's absolutely life-changing.
Now, there are always some exceptions to the rule, right? And there are 2 big ones you need to know about where things work a little bit differently. That's with big mass layoffs and in unionized workplaces.
So if a company terminates 50 or more people at the same location within about a month, that triggers what are called mass termination rules. And when that happens, those individual calculations go out the window. Instead, everyone gets a longer, fixed group notice period. The more people let go, the more notice everyone gets.
If you're a union member, well, the whole game changes completely. Your rights are all spelled out in your collective agreement, and the key idea here is just cause.
This is a way higher bar for the employer. Unlike a without cause termination, they have to prove you did something seriously wrong to let you go. Basically, everything you need to know is in that big book.
Okay, I know that was a ton of information, so let's just boil it all down. What are the absolute key things you need to walk away with if you're ever in this situation? So here's what you've got to remember. The ESA, that's the floor, not the ceiling. It's the starting point, not the whole story. Remember that termination pay and severance pay are two totally different things. And for many, your common law rights are where the real potential for fair compensation is. And maybe the biggest takeaway of all? Never ever sign anything without taking the time to fully understand what you're actually owed.
Which really brings us all the way back to that first question. When your employer hands you a package and calls it standard, you now have the power to ask, is this just the standard legal minimum, or is this the fair and reasonable amount that I am truly owed under the law? Knowing the difference is everything.